Now listen up.
Insights EDU 2025 is almost here. Join us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management event of the year.
I like that.
Imagine 3 action-packed days filled with game-changing insights, real-world case studies, and a hands-on workshop designed to transform your marketing strategy and boost your program enrollment. Learn from speakers at Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the nation. Network with industry leaders, exchange ideas, and discover the tools to drive real results. This is your opportunity to stay ahead of the competition and meet the demands of today's modern learners. Don't wait, spots are filling fast. Mark your calendar, rally your team, and head to insightsedu.com to register now. The era of the modern learner is here, and you need to be part of it. We'll see you in New Orleans. At Ellucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to Ed Up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Fuentes, co-founder of the EdUp Experience, and I have awesome guest co-host today and an awesome guest today. So you know how I work. I like to dive right into it. So let's get started. So my co-host today, and I said his name 3 times, and I'm gonna mess up. I messed up, but I'm gonna try my best. He has been a guest on, and his episode might be already published by the time we publish this one. And he was awesome. He was fun. So we're gonna have him back as a guest co-host. And his name is Roy DeVries. Did I get it, Roy?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah, 3 times the charm, isn't it?
There you go. And he is an online learning innovator at A New Spring. Roy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Elvin. Thanks for the introduction.
Thank you. It's good to have you from the Netherlands, which is awesome. And I appreciate you being here. So let's get to our guest. She is Rachel Rosenfeld, and she is the executive director and head of training at Kotter. Rachel, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate you being here. So, all right. So we have a connection because I was from Boston. You went to Boston University. You actually attended Boston University. I worked at Boston University. I have a connection, which is great. And you have a connection with Roy because you've been to the Netherlands and he lives in the Netherlands. It's great. So now we want to learn more about what do you do and how do you do it, Rachel? Go for it.
Oh, all right. So now I just pitch myself. That's great.
How you doing? There's another way to put it. Hey, I like that.
I'll try to keep it brief. I think for your listeners sort of in the education space, I think one of the most interesting things is that we work really in the primary area of leadership and management and change and transformation and sort of where all of those intersect. And for us right now, we do consulting and training and all different kinds of things in terms of helping people and organizations build that muscle to better lead change. That's really our primary focus. But I think what is fascinating in this environment is just industries and fields that historically have become kind of calcified, right? It's a word that, and I take no credit for that word whatsoever. I should probably shout out to the person that I heard it from probably 10, 15 years ago now when I was working in higher education in this space. And he said, we are in a calcified industry. Kind of all of us in the room just sort of nodded vigorously because we all immediately understood what he was talking about. But this idea that the education system, higher education, K-12, was designed for a much more predictable world. And we're now living in a very unpredictable, uncertain, volatile environment. And there's just so many implications for how we teach, how we learn, how we think about education. And so the work that we do at Kotter really is about helping people to become more adaptable, become more agile, and think about how they can lead through times of change and transformation in a much more nimble way, as opposed to that more predictable environment that we were in previously, many years ago now.
Gotcha. And from what I saw on your LinkedIn page, you've been there for 17 years. Is that correct?
I have been at Kotter for 17 years, yes, which is interesting because technically the firm was founded about 15 years ago. So I started working with Dr. Kotter before he founded the firm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And you mentioned you were working in higher ed before. So where were you? What were you doing? And I was just curious, the transition to working outside of higher ed. You want to briefly talk about that? Just curious.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I should clarify. Not working in higher ed, but with higher ed.
Oh, with higher ed.
The work that we've done at Kotter with a number of different higher ed, both directly with higher ed institutions, but then also sort of with consortiums of kind of grant-funded and foundation-based work with cohorts and groups of institutions.
Okay, gotcha. So I'll pass it over to Roy. Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like a really interesting job you have there, especially head of training services. So as a learning innovator, I want to make sure that we help people learn. We inspire people. We organize events to make sure that our target audience that we want to reach knows the best way to make sure that people get the most out of their training. And I'm very curious, how do you do that, especially in this volatile world where everything is changing, everything is agile? How do you make sure that your training works, that it sticks, that it does the trick?
So there's two things. One is just sort of the way that we are oriented as a firm. We think of ourselves not as a consulting or a training firm, but really as teachers in general. We've always thought about ourselves that way. And the result of that is our approach to teaching and training is very sort of workshop based and hands-on and experiential, and has always been that. And so it's sort of baked into how we think and how we operate and how we design. But the other part of the training portion of it, really, we were kind of lucky in a way. We've had training programs ever since our inception. So that's nothing new that we had training and education sort of pieces to what we offered. But we really had never sort of taken it all apart and constructed it into a sort of a training only approach and view. It was always sort of part of our consulting practice. And a few years ago, actually with the pandemic, when people sort of started to open their aperture and become a little bit more accustomed to and have an appetite for all these different modes of learning that really weren't on the table before. We had to do virtual learning, right? So we were sort of forced into it. But then people started to realize, oh, I can learn this way.
Works.
Some people learned that they actually learn really well that way. Some people, this sort of hybrid approach allows us to think about really tapping into all the different learning styles out there and being able to be much more flexible and reach many more people. So what we were able to do and sort of how our program falls out is we were able to take all of our content, deconstruct it, kind of put it all back together, fill in the gaps, redesign the pieces that needed to be redesigned. But I think the key part of it, there's two decisions that we made there. And like I said, we were lucky because we kind of got to have all the raw material and yet start from scratch, which not a lot of people get the benefit of being able to do. They're usually working with something that exists in a construct that they have to sort of renovate instead of build from the ground up. So we made two decisions. One is every single piece of content that we have and everything we teach can be taught in person in a classroom. It can be taught virtually by an instructor or a faculty member. And we have an asynchronous, self-paced online version of it, everything. So you can really plug and play and adapt to all different learning styles and all different contexts. People who, if you're looking at workforce development, you've got audiences who may be on one schedule or have access to travel or have access to a computer or neither of those things. You may have, you may have budget constraints, travel limitations, scheduling limitations, technology access limitations. There's so many different considerations. And so by having everything that we do available in all three modalities and formats has allowed us to be really flexible and has allowed people to really engage in a way that is meaningful to them. And the other thing that we've done is we've built everything on modules. So all the deck chairs can be moved around, right? It's not just you have to go through in a sequential order and you have to do this full class or this full program. You can weave in the specific areas of content so that it is fit for purpose. It's what people need when they need it. So you're not just sort of going through and thinking about conceptually, oh, well, when I get to this point in my project, 6 months down the road, this is when I'm going to need to be applying this. And I hope I can draw on what I've learned 6 months ago when I actually need to apply it. Like, we really want people to be learning things as they need them so that they can learn it, apply it, practice it, come back and have some sort of peer network. That's a really key part of what we do is creating these peer networks so that people can learn from each other and troubleshoot and problem solve and share wins and celebrate. All of these really important things. So that's how we've approached kind of how you make it stick.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting and quite a tough job, especially, I think in COVID times, and all these modalities need their own little, they have their own requirements to make sure that they're effective, because offering something online is totally different than offering something virtual or live in the classroom. How did you do that? How did that?
We started, we have the benefit of that. We have a very specific area of specialty. So we've got sort of 6 core programs. We don't have 30. We're not trying to design for 15 different topics. We're designing for one core topic, which helps. So we have an area of focus. The other thing is, because we've been delivering this stuff for so long, instructor-led in the classroom, we had a lot to start with in terms of what worked, what didn't work, and what we needed to rethink. So we started with all of our instructor-led in-person experiences, developed the entire program end-to-end, and then went through and made the adjustments. We had a team who was working on the instructor-led side and a team who was working on the asynchronous side, and then a couple of folks who overlapped so that there's continuity and consistency across the experiences. But we started with our core of what we had been doing for many years around the classroom experience.
Yeah, and build off the experience there, and then use that experience that you have to further develop the rest of the programs, I can imagine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. And we got really, really great, fun partners in each modality. Mm-hmm. Right? We had a really great partner for our web-based design experience, who was just super creative, understood us, ran focus groups with our customers, like all of these kinds of things to really be able to adjust for that experience in a way that made sense.
Cool. So a great in-house team, but also great partners to support you on the outside. Yeah.
I wanted to jump in, Roy. So I want to learn more about your customers. You mentioned customers. And so who are the customers and what is it that they're looking for when they reach out to Kotter and then you come into play? It's like, what is it that they want? So can you talk us through that that kind of process of how it all works in terms of, well, okay, this is the type of customer we work with. When they reach out to us, these are their challenges and this is what we do to help.
Yeah, so we it's interesting. I was in a session a couple of weeks ago, And one of the participants said one of the things that was really sort of hitting her from the experience was that we all kind of know that we need more skills beyond the technical skills, right? We all know this. This is not new or news. But she shifted the way that she was talking about it. And because we always struggle, I think there's a connotation around the idea of soft skills. And sort of the merit or the importance or the weight or the seriousness of soft skills or the measurability of soft skills. And she flipped it and she said, they're really not soft skills that we're learning here. They're life skills. And that to me was such a light bulb comment. And I think will be one of those things that sticks with me going forward. And I will probably repeat it over and over because I have a tendency to grab onto something and do that. But when it comes to how that reflects, that links to sort of who our customer is and what they want and need, our customers are really, at the end of the day, are people in all different walks of life, right? So we have individuals who are either leading changes with their own organization or another organization. They're consulting with folks who are going through change. They are between careers and looking to make a change. They are looking to expand on their own professional development. So we've got a whole sort of set of individuals who are really interested in this topic as a core skill that they want to build for all different reasons. We have organizations of all different types and sizes, for-profit, nonprofit, government, and we've got leaders within those organizations who are looking to build more adaptable leaders and teams. And so that can take all different shapes. It can be an executive education program. It can be some project-based work. It can be broad-based training where we've got a whole organization, a whole university who wants all of their faculty to be at least sort of understanding one common language around change as they're going through all of the changes that are happening around their university. And so that they can kind of be more unified and on the same team as they're going through those. But people really are looking to build that muscle and that mindset for change. That's what they're coming to us primarily for. A lot of it is in response to some of the major changes that are happening in their world. Oftentimes it's a digital transformation or there's some aspect or component of that today, whether it's a new system, whether it's consolidating systems, whether it's AI. I mean, kind of, pick your poison. So a lot of times it's surrounding that, but really people are looking for, how do I build a more adaptable team? How do I allow my people to be more adaptive and have a mindset for change where they want to pursue change rather than being sort of frozen and stuck when a change comes their way? So that's really what we're getting asked to help shift for people.
Yeah, I love that change muscle. I think that's super
I
good.
was going to ask about that.
Yeah, go ahead, Murray.
Yeah, no, I was curious about this muscle. You've mentioned it a couple of times now. We know how we train real muscles. At least some people do. Maybe not myself. But this muscle for change. That sounds like an interesting. An interesting metaphor to talk about it like that. So how do you train that muscle?
You just made the list!
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Well, I think there's a reason that we sort of adopted that phrase, and it is because it's a matter of if you go back to sort of what it takes to build a culture. So there's research around what it takes to build culture, and that sort of relates to habit building. And the idea of culture building is it has an element of repetition and repeated nature to it, where it just becomes the way you do things over and over and over again. And there's habits and behaviors that you need to repeat and practice. And so that idea of building the muscle around change is very similar, where you need to practice and sort of be it constantly doing it and reinforcing it and learning from it. And so from that perspective, it is a matter of sort of putting into place and putting into practice opportunities for people. Which, I mean, in the education space, talk about there's the whole topic of project-based learning, right? That you could spend multiple episodes on, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I'll let you save that for somebody else, but it's similar in concept to this idea of sort of constant project-based learning. Right. So how are you doing that over and over again in order to build and strengthen that muscle, practice, refine, tone? And even if you think about the way that we train our physical muscles, you train differently based on the sport you're in. Right? So not every athlete is going to train the same way. You need to train for the sport you are planning to compete in. And that's similar with change. It's not going to be exact. You're not going to apply it in the same ways to the same things, exactly the same way all the time. You're going to do it in the environment that you're in pursuit of the opportunity that's in front of you with the people who are alongside you. There's all of these considerations that should influence the choices that you make when it comes to the training. The other sort of aspect of the change muscle as a phrase or as a term, and we talk about this a lot, is the idea of a muscle is that you flex it, but not all the time. So you're not just sitting there with a flexed muscle indefinitely. And so part of this idea of the muscle building is understanding when to use certain elements, when to flex certain muscles, when to flex others. So you need to have really well-developed, well-trained muscles, and then you also need to know when to use them. And that comes with practice and time.
Yeah, exactly. I love that you talked about the holistic part, and that really came to life for me when you just explained this, because it's not. We've been talking to customers as well who said training, one-off training does not stick. It does not work, and I agree with that. It's not that you go into a classroom half a day, you learn about your muscle, when to flex it, when not to flex it, and hey, good luck, you're out there. See you later. It's about this whole holistic program. It's about a little part of training. It's about the performance support. It's about supporting them in their workplace. And that makes that they can change their habits, that they can really start to use that muscle in appropriate ways. So I think that's, I really love that approach. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us know there's only so much actual learning that happens in the classroom. And really, the actual like absorbing of it and internalizing of it and true, deep, long-term learning happens by doing the things that you learned about in the classroom, and happens by then, in a perfect world, having opportunities to teach others what you
learned.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And, one of the things that I'm curious to learn from you, because obviously you have a lot of different clients. I mean, the way you laid it out, even from single individuals to organizations, large, small, not for profit, for profit. So I'm curious to know what are some of the trends and challenges that you see for the learning and development leaders coming up for 2025? Because I know, especially personalized learning experiences, that's a big one. I keep hearing about AI assistants. It's just going to personalize everything to the point where it's infinite memory, and they're going to remember everything that you put in, and they're going to put it all back out. And there's so many tools out there now that can just really help you with your personalized learning experiences. So what do you see coming out in 2025?
I think in 2025, what I'm hearing a lot of is a lot of those tensions, and two in particular. So one, which you just mentioned, which is this idea of how do we capitalize on and take advantage of the technology and the AI and what it can do for us, especially since we're all learning it at the same time. So how can learning and development professionals, how can professors, how can teachers, how can instructors, how can trainers be ahead of the curve when we're all on the curve together? That's the challenge.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're also in a market where you've got services that you're competing against others for, you then also want to get ahead as well. And so how can we be motivated and excited and inspired to aggressively pursue the exploration of that, while also giving ourselves some grace and understanding that we're all in this together and we're all on this journey together. And so I think that's one of the sort of the top challenges, is trying to just really hold that tension and be able to move forward, work together, work with others, collaborate with our students and our learners, learn from them in terms of what's working, what they want to see, what's reasonable to develop, how can I leverage X, Y, and Z technology that's coming out. So there's sort of the AI component. There's also, I think, the post-pandemic component that we're still, that I think we're still figuring out how things are going to shake out. And maybe they don't shake out. Maybe it's just a constant evolution and a constant shift from year to year or whatnot. But we had such a swing from like everybody in a classroom in person together to nobody in person in a classroom together, where everybody suddenly said, oh, we could do all of our learning online. This is great. And now people are realizing we're human. We desire to be in community with each other, like physically in a space, and that there are things we can do when we are actually physically together that are much more challenging to do when we are virtual. And so I think figuring out what that blend is with your hybrid learning. Some people just really want to only be in person. Other people are like, I really need the convenience and practicality of being virtual. And so how do you get those people together? How do you connect all of those dots? How do you design a program that fits everybody? To your point around personalized learning, it's kind of like there's now so much out there. You can't be everything to everybody, but how do you make the best of what you've got for what you're teaching, who you're teaching, when you're teaching it, and how?
Yeah, and before I pass it over to Roy, just a follow-up on that. I'm curious to know, because I think we get a good sense of, in an educational system, how we measure impact. So in your system, in your world, how do you measure impact? What's that process look like?
So it's interesting because all of the different organizations and people that we work with, I would say, part of me wants to say they all measure it differently. And then as soon as I say that out loud, I catch myself, because there is a common thread to how they do it. And so I do think that it is tracking how our sort of behavioral shifts influencing the business or the organizational outcomes. So part of what our whole methodology relies on being oriented around some kind of opportunity or change, or you know what success is going to look like, or what an opportunity is that's in front of you. So you know what you're pursuing. So it's not just amorphous, what you're trying to accomplish together. So from that aspect, it really is saying, we know, I mean, statistically, 70% of any change effort fails, right? I mean, it's a statistic that's just sort of held true for, 50 years now. And so you know that the likelihood of success is on the lower end. The likelihood of really succeeding is very low. It's like 5% or less of people who really overperform on what they hope to achieve. So if you're doing things faster than you thought you could do them, if you're involving more people than you expected to be able to involve, if you are seeing multiple different metrics and trend lines go up. So say you're not just seeing your, if it's a commercial enterprise, say it's not just your revenue that's going up, but your employee engagement and your retention is also going up. So connecting those things together and tracking those things in a relational way instead of in an isolated way. But it's obviously these kinds of skills are more challenging to measure than simple numbers, because the numbers come out at the end of the month, or the end of the quarter, or the end of the school year. We've got X amount of attrition of students. We've got our teachers are paid within whatever percentile compared to our peers. And so we are either competitive or not as competitive as we need to be in the market. And how do our finances fall out in terms of, teacher recruitment and pay? And I mean, there's just all of these different ways of looking at things over time. But you can make those connections, and you can track the impact. And a lot of it is being able to tell the story. I remember we were working on a grant with, it was 26 universities or something. I might have the number wrong, but it was roughly about that. And they were implementing a new sort of student success portal, or student advisory portal that everybody across the university would connect into. And it was kind of like, a lot of people around the universities were like, why do I need to go in and be part of sort of student advisory? That's not my gig. That's not my job. That's more work for me. And at the end of the day, the reason they were doing it is because kids would fall out of the system because they didn't have an end-to-end comprehensive experience. And I'll never forget this, one of the universities was trying to figure out, how do we help people see why we're doing this? Like, actually see why we're doing this. And when they ordered all of their diploma folders for graduation, they ordered not just enough diplomas for the kids who were graduating, they ordered a diploma folder for every kid that they had lost who would have been in that graduating class. And they put all of those empty folders up on the way to graduation. And my goodness, if you couldn't just in one shot understand why we all should want to be part of the solution. So, and then if you start to take those types of examples and they all build up, and then you start to see retention increasing, and you start to see kids staying, and you start to see kids succeeding, and you start to look at those success metrics, you can make those connections pretty clearly if you timestamp those moments.
Wow.
But in fact,
hold on, Roy. Before I go back to you, Roy, I know you want to ask a question. I just want to say, that is so powerful. Oh my God, that visual of just stacking up those diplomas that should have gone to the people that, that every institution that has a retention, they should be doing that. It's just absolutely so powerful. Oh my God, that's one. Thanks for telling that story. That's amazing. Okay, Roy, go ahead. On to you.
No, I was going to say exactly the same. That when you talk about impact, that is impact, right? yeah, that makes it work. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah. And there are examples of that kind of thing happening all over the place. And I think, and part of the challenge is that we haven't conditioned ourselves, and we're moving so fast all the time that we have not really ever appreciated the value of stopping and recognizing when stuff like that is happening, calling it out, and then sharing it so that others can not just appreciate it, but learn from it, get inspired by it. You throw out these big creative ideas, and at the end of the day, there's so many great ideas that can be inspired by things like that. And it doesn't all need to be big and flashy and crazy. It just needs to be meaningful to the people who are there and who need to understand it and see it and participate in it.
Love that concept.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everyone who's listening now should reflect, take a moment, step back, think about those stories in your own organization. Yeah, don't go just to the next one. Let's stand still for a moment, especially in these times. It's 2nd of December, guys. So take some moment to reflect.
Yeah, and to look around and not put the pressure on yourself to come up with the next great thing, but to look around and recognize and honor the things that have already happened or that are already in motion.
Yeah. So we're going to wrap up. So Roy, do you have any final questions you want to ask Rachel?
Oh, you've been saying a lot of cool stuff already. Do you mind going back to your earlier job? Because I read on the website that you owned a firm in luxury wedding planning, and I'm very curious what you took from that experience into this job, and what is it that helps you in this job?
Oh, that's a question I haven't been asked before, actually. It's funny. Yes, before I started working with Dr. Kotter, I owned a wedding planning company. Honestly, at the end of the day, I loved the dynamics of coordinating lots of moving parts. So for me, sort of the business aspect of wedding planning, event planning, there were two things that I think I brought with me that I really appreciate. One is just sort of every project is different and has all different dynamics, all different people. And so all of those moving parts and all of the different people and personalities and perspectives, not just to manage it and coordinate it, but to learn from it, is one piece. And then the other piece is, I think, just some of the required sort of flexibility and resiliency. I always said in wedding planning, I always planned for every single scenario that I could possibly think of.
Mm-hmm.
So that the only thing that we had to worry about on the day of the wedding were the things that were completely unpredictable. Right? And there was always something. And in some weddings, they were more extreme than others, or multiple things would happen. But if you had planned for everything that you could possibly think of end to end, then you really had a much calmer ability to pivot and navigate and respond to the things that were completely unpredictable. And I think in my job here, the ability to have this balance of like real deep planning and thought and intention and going through every single scenario, but also doing that almost in service of knowing that we're going to be thrown curveballs so that we can then move and flex and pivot when those come.
Oh, I bet you have some really fun stories from that time of your life.
Yes.
We don't have enough time
Yes,
for that.
I do.
Yeah. That's a whole podcast series in itself. That's a
Separate book altogether.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, Rachel, crystal ball time. This conversation has been awesome.
And my last question is, what do you see as the future of learning? What do you think is going to happen? And how are we going to learn, Rachel? What's the future look like? Not just 2025. I mean, I'm talking about way beyond. What do you think?
They also asked me that question. It's a difficult one. Yeah, you can have some time to think about it.
It's a big question, especially when you're like, okay, we've got 60 seconds left. Let me
2 minutes. That's short. Go ahead.
The future of learning, I think, is going to be more dynamic. I think more varied. To your point around personalized, I think we're going to figure out ways to make it more personalized and still be able to serve the people that we need to serve. I think it's going to be, interestingly, I think there's going to be elements of it that are much more tech enabled for efficiency's sake. And I think there's going to be pieces of it that we go back to being much more human. I think we're going to do a lot more learning outside of the classroom. I would like to see, I don't know that this will happen or not, but maybe I can manifest it by saying it out loud. I would like to see more learning happen in the context of sort of real world work experiences so that there's more of a connection to learning with how we spend the hours of our day in the workforce. I think that's going to be an important evolution of learning. I hope that happens. And I hope that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's great. Crystal ball moment. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Rachel. That was fantastic. So this has been an amazing conversation. And I first want to say thank you to my co-host, Roy, which I'm not going to try the last name again, Matt.
No, not again. Thanks so much for having me. Enjoyed talking to you, Rachel.
Yeah. Thanks for being here and learning Innovator at a new spring. And ladies and gentlemen, she is Rachel Rosenfeld, and she is Executive Director and Head of Training at Kotter, or as they say in Boston, Kotter. So, Rachel, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Alvin and Roy. I really, really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. We did too. There you have it, everyone. You know what you've done. You've just ed up.
Attention, higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list!
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.